Hi, guys. So I'm going to go a little bit lighter, but I'm going to focus more on, I think some of you, for those of you that are vendors and you're getting into a DSO, trying to crack open the front door, trying to have conversations, this will be interesting because I was on the other side of that conversation at Smile Brands for a while. So a little bit about me. I'm a Chief Product Officer at Vyne. I was the prior CEO of a startup out of Canada, actually, doing RCM automation. I've been a CFO. I was the Chief Performance Officer at Smile Brands, where I ran all the RCM, patient financing, and a bunch of other stuff. And actually own my own billing company. I've got about half my experience on the medical side. So I started on the medical side, and then I moved over to the dental side. And so about even split at this point between both industries. I am decidedly, just like all of us, our perceptions, our experiences shape our point of view on technology, on all other things, right? So you're going to hear from me, somebody that really comes at things from a process perspective. Anybody know what Six Sigma is? Okay, so I was a master black belt before it was cool to be a master black belt. Not like it's actually cool today either, but I'm a finance person. So I have this weird blend of an approach to these types of problems, to automation. I'm very passionate about AI, but I approach everything from a process perspective first. And I'm definitely an operator versus a technologist. So I got a short amount of time here. So what I really want to make sure I do is cover what I believe, at least one person's perspective, coming from an operator's perspective on technology and AI from a DSO. And I'm going to start and I'm going to talk about what ends up happening in a DSO no matter where, right? And so I was at Smile Brands, and when I got there, we were about 360 locations. I left 5 years later, we were about 700 locations. I took the effective cost of RCM down 32 percentage points over that time, right? I didn't lay people off, by the way, just so we're clear, right? Now, the reason I was able to do that is really by leveraging a lot of technology. But here is the truth. For all of you selling into DSOs, or if you're a DSO yourself, there's an axiom. If you've seen one DSO, you've seen one DSO. And this is really important. So you know, if you're 30 locations, if you're 700 locations, if you're PDS, if you're, you know, everybody's a little bit different, but there are some universal truths. And one of the things, at least from an RCM perspective, you have to tackle at some point is the reality of scale, right? And so let's talk a little bit about that. So each DSO's journey is different, and I'm going to define scale here a little bit first, but each DSO's journey is different, and you really have to ask yourself, well, where am I in my journey? But at the end of the day, especially when it comes to RCM, the trick is how can I add more locations but incur less incremental cost, right? And that's the name of the game, whether you have an RCM operation, whether you have let's say a call center for doing scheduling. Scale is this idea that fundamentally, right, as you get more and more locations, as you grow, what happens to your cost curve? Right? And so, again, I'm a finance guy by initial training, at least. This is really how I think about it. And so this 45-degree angle curve is no bueno for a DSO, right? And we all know this, right? The bigger you get, the next incremental location you add ought to cost you incrementally less. And so this idea of bending the cost curve happens. It's going to happen. Now, if you're a 10-location DSO or a 30-location DSO, you may be saying, well, but we don't centralize, and so the doctors have, you know, they each manage their own location. You're dealing with scale. At some point, you will deal with scale. It doesn't matter, I'm not even talking about centralization per se, right? Because the initial thought when we started doing DSOs, you started doing this, well, I'm gonna get everybody in the same location, put them all in a cube farm, and then somehow I'm gonna save some incremental money. Yeah, that works a little bit. And then we said, well, I'm gonna offshore everything, right? Yep, labor arbitrage, right? That works a little bit. Well, we're all past that now. So now it's really about how do you automate, get rid of the work. But this question will happen. Don't know when. Typically, I've seen, and I was in a business for a couple years, all we did was sell to DSOs. We had nothing but DSO customers. 10 to 15 locations, you start having these questions. If you own a DSO or you run a DSO, it's about 10 to 15 locations. You start saying, geez, do I need, every time I add a location, do I need an RCM specialist, or do I need this, or do I need that? So what's really interesting, and there's a reason for this, is does work actually change when you scale, right? And when you're an individual office, picture not, right? The office manager typically does everything. He or she is just fantastic, right? But they follow up on claims every Friday. Oh, that's my claim follow-up day. They bill, every Wednesday afternoon. That's my billing day. I'm gonna batch it all up and I'm gonna send it. There's nothing wrong with that, and in reality, it's out of necessity, right? Because they're also treatment planning, right? They're talking to me, I have massive phobia. I don't like people shoving their hands in my mouth, so they gotta deal with me. I'm a big baby. They gotta deal with all this other stuff. Well, specialization, when you get into a DSO, what you actually try to do is you actually develop specialists, right? And the real question is, now, so when for instance, I ran the RCM team. So I had specialists that all they did was follow up on claims. I had specialists that all they did were post payments. Now I had enough volume. We did 1.7 million claims a year. I had a lot of volume to put through that. And so this play of where can the work best be done? Who does it? Are you equally good at every task when you're an office manager and you're doing everything, or is there somebody that's inherently better at writing appeals or doing things like that than you are? The reality is, it's true that none of us are good at everything we do, but I guarantee in this room there's somebody that knows more than all of us about any one given topic. And if we had our druthers, we would say, geez, we'll get Wes to answer the AI questions, or somebody else. We'll say, I don't know what Paul will do, but I'll get Nick to answer the market questions, or so on and so forth. So that's specialization. So the way to specialize, or the way you facilitate that, and this isn't rocket science, guys, is you kind of make work liquid. Now, whether we talk about this or not, whether we use these words or not, has anybody heard that term, liquid labor? So when people started going, work remote and all those things, we talked about this mass wave of liquid labor force, right? You can hire people anywhere, do things, work remotely. It was big at the start of COVID. I'm talking about actually making the work liquid, right? And if you're a DSO, and I'm part of OHIA, so I'd love to see that. I'm actually on the steering committee. Vyne's a sponsoring member. I'm passionate about this, and I'm passionate because it's from a process perspective. If you're a dental practice, if you are, the only document I've ever signed when I go into the dentist is I give the dentist the right to use my data, right? I don't give software companies the right to use, I give the dentist the right. So in my view, coming from a DSO perspective, but also a patient perspective, if you're a DSO, you should demand your data. Because if you're going to make work liquid, and you're gonna manage your DSO the way you need to manage your DSO, and you recognize that you're one of one, and that you may be 15 locations into a 100 location journey, and your processes are gonna need to be adaptive as you grow. You'll wanna centralize things, decentralize others. You need data to do all of this. And so this whole concept of interoperability, access to your data, right to your data, is really, really important. And the last speaker brought it up, and I encourage all of you to really look at this. It's the law. That's the funny part. It's the law. It's just not enforced. Certainly on the medical side, for those of you that have medical background, it absolutely is commonplace there. Data is shared, there's a data standard, et cetera, et cetera. So I will tell you that the cat is out of the bag. I mean, we're in meetings and you got Medicare people. This is no joke, this is coming, it's the law, and it will happen, and it will be standard, there'll be standardizations, there'll be data sharing and all that, but DSOs and providers can really accelerate it by simply demanding access to their own data. Now, why does data matter? The reality is whether we're talking about appealing claims, whether we're talking about an unpaid claim, a patient that hasn't paid their invoice, if you think about it, the lowest common denominator, the work looks the same. If I said to you, here's 100 claims that haven't paid, please go figure out what's going on with these claims. Or if I said, here's 100 patients that haven't, you would do the same first thing. You would research it, right? You'd get the data, and then you'd understand it, right? Then you decide what to do, and then you take action. That is universal. I don't care if you're talking to United Healthcare as a payer, you're talking to Delta Dental, whatever. You're going to do the same exact thing. So focus on the commonalities. So the ability to get access to data, but then to move the data to where the work can best be performed, in my mind, is part of how you unlock the power of AI. And this is where technology absolutely goes crazy. It's beautiful, it's perfect, right? But you gotta have access to the data, you federate it, and then you can move the work wherever it can best be done. That's all that, in my mind, when we just saw, this shift left notion, you're really freeing the data, making decisions at a different point in the process to facilitate speed of process, accuracy of process, whatever. It's what Overjet, what Video, what all of them are doing. So in terms of getting data, now this is decidedly non-technical, right? But the funny thing is there's a lot of technology here that's been around for years and years and years. Like RPA is not a new technology. I think you'll hear from a company that I've worked with, SuperDial, that uses voice AI to get data. That's what they're really doing. They're using technology to get data cheaper than what a human can do it, more accurate as well. Analyzing data. Well, clearly AI can analyze data 8 ways from Sunday. The complexity that AI can look at, the human brain can't even fathom. I'll tell you all a funny story about my caveats here. Deciding what to do. Well, there's rules engines, right? That's stochastic. All that stuff goes way, way back. There's nothing fancy about that. But, AI, human experts, there's always a role for humans here. There's always going to be exceptions. But taking action, I actually believe, and I haven't seen it yet, I actually believe in the power of agentic AI. I especially think the eligibility and benefit area is one where agentic AI will probably, from an administrative perspective, make it, rear its head the first. I actually think it's very rules-based. It's just that there are a lot of rules, and the permutations and combinations of things and eligibility are too much for the human brain. I'll tell you guys a story. I feel like I got a little extra time. I'll tell you guys a story about the complexity in dentistry that frankly blew my mind. So when I was at Smile Brands, I actually had a Center of Excellence team, and all they did all day long was really work on process improvement. Because we really wanted to find out, well, why is it so hard to accurately price a treatment plan? So we said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go get full eligibility breakdowns, 3 cases. So here's full, I don't even remember, but we got the full breakdown, all the data you need. And then we went and we did 3 narratives of treatment plans, fairly straightforward, some a little more complicated. There's a crown, there's a root canal, whatever, right? And then we went around, so we had 700 locations. We went to 110 of them. And we've got the average person answering our question probably had about 13 years of tenure in dentistry. Anyone want to guess? And we said, it was 3 examples, score it, tell me what the price is. Anybody want to guess how accurate across 110, 13-year averaged office managers, how accurate they were manually? Anyone want to guess? 60%. Not a single person got 100% of it right. So wrap your heads around that. So that means, wait a minute. So unless we hire incompetent people, nope. That means that the most experienced people in our business could not price a treatment plan accurately, consistently. So think about that and the role that technology could play. But that's the kind of problems that a lot of practices, DSOs are dealing with. All right, I'll give you some final observations, right? So I've obviously skimmed over the tech piece. I always tell people, like, for me, always start with understanding your own processes. And I think Wes made some really great points along this line. Like, it doesn't matter, start with the problem, but you better make sure that you understand that problem from soup to nuts, right? Because if you don't, you're just automating a crappy process. Getting bad results faster is not exactly a great thing. And so I always see people that say, well, I'm going to use AI. I'm going to be AI first. That's great. Map your process for me. Tell me how it works today. And they can barely do it. And invariably, if you can't map it, then how do you know what good looks like? How do you know what to fix? So always start with understanding your own process. I firmly believe this, right? There's certainly new innovations, new uses of technology, but the technology we need today has already been invented. There's more than enough problems to go around, and there's no new technology that needs to be invented. It exists today. To me, it's about bringing it together in the right use case and stacking it and having the right business process around it. I don't believe certainly large language models and things like that will get better, but honestly, I'll talk about an example of AI that I saw in 2016, deep learning models looking at payer behavior. And we'll talk a little bit about that here at the end. But, that was the most complex thing I'd ever seen in my life. We'll find out. I'll tell you the story about why it didn't matter. Your best people, if you're in a DSO, typically your best people are doing a lot more repetitive work than you actually ever think about, right? And the funny thing is, really good people, really talented people are actually kind of crappy at repetitive work. If you've ever noticed that. A players are not good at cocoon. Technology is unbelievably good at it. So if you don't embrace AI or you want to delay that's fine. Use RPA, do some kind of automation. Just understand that the variability of human talent exists, right? This is a normal distribution of talent in this room. I promise you, if you were to take our IQ scores, EQ scores, whatever, we would plot out on a normal distribution. The same thing happens in a DSO, in RCM, you've got a normal distribution. The beauty of a lot of the AI stuff, there's no normal distribution of talent. Once you've got it tuned, it'll do it the same way every single time. And that's extremely powerful. But it's not just powerful because of the result you get, it's powerful because then you free up people to actually do the work they're really good at and they love doing. Anybody ever heard, maybe somebody's heard this, be very careful about the Lamborghini on a lawnmower, Lamborghini engine on a lawnmower. Everybody heard that expression? Maybe it's mine. But, so 2016, wonderful company out of the Pacific Northwest. The guy that the CTO had been in defense. He's about 70 years old. This guy was doing deep learning AI models. Just unbelievable stuff. And we actually had a model, and I can't remember if I was at HBMA or something like that, but I was advising them. And this company doesn't exist anymore, by the way, because this is a classic example. And so what they had figured out is they took a bunch of EOBs and they ran them through their deep learning model. And then they sort of plotted this beautiful graphic over time, right? So they had months and months and months. And what you could actually see payers over time changing their adjudication models dynamically, right? You could see it. And I was like, wow, are you telling me that payers actually change? Like if they're getting too many claims of one type or too many claims of another, they actually change their adjudication model? Answer was yes. I'm like, well, that's fantastic. Now go try and sell that to a provider. They were inspecting at the payer side, and it was a beautiful model, and it worked really well, but it had no practical use. So you go try and, who's going to pay for that? So you go try and put it into market, and the providers are like, well, that's really interesting, but how can you tell me that before I send my claim? Inspect it versus telling me at the end that this is what they're doing. Now that's beautiful technology running around looking for a problem to solve, and that company failed. So That's a Lamborghini engine on a lawnmower kind of problem. All right, so that's it for me. I guess if you guys want to get a hold of me, I love talking about this stuff. Hopefully I'm super practical, but it's a lot of fun, and I think we're at this sort of precipice of a new chapter in our industry. I think there's been a lot of lumps. People have taken some lumps, but there's tons of cool companies doing a ton of cool stuff. I think this next 5 years with interoperability, with AI, with technology, with APIs, stuff starting to open up is really going to get exciting. So thanks.
Thanks, Paul.